historian, Brian Murphy. He will be joining us later on talking about in context of everything that's happening in terms of politics, COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. They'll all be joining us momentarily. And just in case you did not get the introduction and you could not hear us, that's okay, because we're going to say good morning, good morning, good morning again. Welcome to another episode of Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth and not care who doesn't like it. Rebecca Azor is not here today. He will be back on tomorrow. And so we'll give you all the introductions and the greetings again. But that in case, James, the people didn't hear you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm blessed and highly favored. Thank you, somebody.
Hey man, what I like about you, James, is that you just don't care, man. You would go from Megan Thee Stallion to the Clark sisters in no time flat. You go from Cardi B to Kirk Franklin in no time flat, man. And I respect, because that's my life, right? If you go to my playlist, right. if you go to my Spotify account, it's a toss up. Like, you know how Spotify at the end of every year they tell you who you listen to the most. I was really nervous this year because I wasn't sure if it was going to be Kirk Franklin or Megan Thee Stallion. Thankfully, Kirk Franklin won out by like 5 streams, right? So
that's
anyway,
funny.
We in the same boat with regards to that. But anyway, Rebecca, Harry back. We're going to get started with some news, and I want to talk first about this data that's coming out from Pew Research. And Pew Researchers released some data just this morning talking about the views of whether schools should wait to reopen until teachers are vaccinated. And it varies by demographic. You wouldn't think that this kind of information, James, would vary by demographic. You would think that most people with common sense would want these schools to remain closed, at least until teachers, administration, staff, custodial staff, bus drivers actually get the vaccine. That's not the case. Common sense is not the case in this country, right? And what we're seeing is that it really breaks down along demographic lines as well as political lines. And this is the percentage of people saying K through 12 schools that are not currently open in any in-person instruction. And the question that they ask them is, should schools reopen as soon as possible, even if teachers who want the coronavirus vaccine haven't received it, versus wait until all teachers who want the coronavirus vaccine have received it? And you can see at the top of this, all adults, it breaks down 59% of Americans at least have a modicum of common sense. 40% are saying, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're saying, send these kids back to school, send these workers, these teachers, the staff back to school, whether or not they've been vaccinated or not. And what's interesting is in that middle section there, it breaks down by race. White Americans, 51% say let them stay at home. 48% says send them back to school. And you look at this, look at how it flips immediately. When you go to the Black community, 80% of Black people in this country get it, saying that we should wait until teachers are vaccinated. Now, when I say teachers, I'm talking about everybody. Don't just vaccinate the teachers, vaccinate the entire staff, right? Custodial workers, right?
Everybody. Yep.
The cafeteria lady, like the bus drivers. A friend of mine drives buses, and he picked up a new route. And the route he picked up was because the bus driver died of COVID-19, right?
Wow.
It's wild out here, man. Hispanics, 69% say wait. Asians, 72% say wait. Look at how it breaks down by income. This is the interesting thing. This is why I wanted to talk about it. Not only is it racial disparity, right, but it's also an income disparity. 67% of lower income Americans, poor people, working class people, say that we need to wait until teachers are vaccinated. It goes down. When you're middle income, middle class Americans, 57%, upper income, 52%. It is a majority, but it's a small majority, which means there's a lot of people who really buy into this idea that this pandemic isn't serious enough to keep our children and our teachers safe. Now, here's the biggest disparity. Republicans, or people who lean Republican, 65% of Republicans say that we should put folks back into schools, whether or not teachers who desire to be vaccinated are vaccinated. And it flips almost on its head when you go to Democrats, 79%. So what this is saying is that there is a political philosophical and ideological belief system at work when it comes to COVID-19, right? Mm-hmm. It's saying that there are Americans who hold on to their political ideology more than they hold on to common sense, and even more so than they care about the concerns of the lives of teachers. Now, when I first looked at this, James, I was really worried about, no, not worried. My first interpretation of this is that maybe these folks just don't care about their kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But then when you look at the breakdown on income levels, right, it's more rich people who are saying, let these kids go back to school. And it's way more Republicans who are saying, let these kids. I had to think about that and process that. It's not that these people don't care about their kids. It's that they don't care about our kids, because they're wealthy enough to make sure that their kids can have a private tutor, can have a stay-at-home nanny to teach them. Or at a minimum, go to a private school where they have enhanced protocols to make sure that everyone is safe. So it's not that these folks who want teachers to go back to school and students to go back to school, it's not that they don't care about their children, because I guarantee you, none of these people who are saying send all these kids back to school and send all these teachers back to school, I doubt a single one of them are going to send their kids back to a public school where on the best day, right? On the best day, James, when the sun is shining, there's not a cloud in the sky, much like today. The weather is just right. The temperature's just right. On the best day, these schools are petri dishes. They're incubators. Yep. It's where you get like every cold that my household, we haven't had a cold in a year because we haven't sent our kids to school in a year. We've been homeschooling them, right? But on the best day, the average school is just a cesspool of sharing germs back and forth. And I guarantee you, James, not a single one of these rich people, not a single one of these Republicans are going to be sending their kids back to school, with the exception of the few poor Republicans who still buy into the idea that the Republican Party is a party for working people. Some of them may not have enough common sense to not send their kids back to school. But I guarantee you, man, there's more rich people in this. There's more Republicans in this who are interested in sending your kids back versus their kids. And the reason they need to do that is because they need to make sure that all the workers in this country have quote unquote babysitters, so that they can go out into the fields and do all the manual labor that these capitalists need them to do in order to make their money. So I wanted to start there. We didn't really talk about this much last night, but what are your thoughts on all of these? This is just wild to me. Like, why would they send and why would they put children and teachers in harm's way when we just crossed 500,000 deaths in this country from COVID-19 alone? What do you think, man?
Man, it absolutely makes no dang on sense, man, because it's just like, why would you even want to send your kids back in something like this? And I understand that the dynamic change when all of a sudden everybody has to stay at home. And that means that families had to spend time together for the first time in a year or years before doing anything. And it's just like, it shouldn't be like that. So now your kids are home all day, your husband, your wife, your spouse, your partner, whatever it is at home all day. And now y'all are just stuck looking stupid at each other. Y'all got to get used to it. There's no way in hell I would send my kids back to school in this climate. Right. It's not possible, dude. Cobb County, oh my gosh, 3 teachers died. Literally within days of each other from COVID. Man. And it is like, it makes no sense. Why not even, and first of all, why, if y'all wanted these kids to go back to school so bad, y'all should have put the damn teachers in the first group of people to get vaccinated. Right. Man. Mic drop. Simple as that.
Just man, not only that, like they should have created the situation. They should have been wearing masks, right? Like, I ain't gonna lie, man. I straight up, if I see people without masks, like there's a level of rage and violence that comes up in me that I just have to walk away and be like, but I hate these people who don't wear masks. I mean, we're at 500,000 deaths, and we could have prevented probably more than half of them if people put on masks. And we could have opened schools up. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my kids. James, you know I love my kids.
Right.
I love my kids. I can't personally wait until school opens back up safely. I love my kids enough to not send them out into this storm. Right. I'm lucky enough, I'm privileged enough to not have to, because we work from home, right? The situation is is that they don't only need people to go out and work, right? They need people to go out and consume and hit the bars and hit the restaurants and hit the clubs. They need us out there spending our money. And that comes at the expense right now of our lives. And so this whole thing about getting people back to school has nothing to do with education. Let's just be sure. Like, it has nothing, literally nothing to do with whether or not it's in the best interest of these children. It has everything to do with the fact that this country is committed to capitalism and corporatism far more than they are committed to the safety and well-being of its own citizens. And I don't honestly know of any other way to look at it. Like, talk to me, man, real quick about like the folks, because most everybody I know is keeping their kids at home. Most everybody I know right now, they're blessed enough to be able to work from home. But that's not everybody's story.
Yeah, it's not, Ben. Luckily my brother was able, my nieces, they're at home, they're homeschooled. So I'm glad that they were able to be home and not have to deal with any of this. I know at one point that county opened up schools, but brother and sister-in-law decided, they're not going back to school. Not right now. Anyway, I know plenty of teachers that, and this is the part, it really freaking sucks, dude, that they're being made to come back into the classroom. Regardless of if they're teaching virtual or if they're teaching in person, they have to come on site now. Right. And it's like, it's plenty of teachers that I know. And that sucks, dude. Y'all are putting your lives at risk to go teach. It shouldn't be like that. All these protests and everything else, they mean a lot because it makes no sense that they're dealing with this. It really doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And what really bugs me out, man, is like, it's how just completely indifferent our leaders are to this, right? Yeah. How completely indifferent they are. Like, even Joe Biden is talking about sending people back to school. And so to me, it's like, if we're going to open up these schools, then the number one things that we have to do is make sure the teachers are vaccinated, make sure the staff is vaccinated, we got to make sure kids are vaccinated, because even if the teachers are vaccinated, the kids spread it amongst themselves and then take it home and end up becoming orphans. Like, this thing is really hurting a lot of people. And we've seen a year nonstop. We've had a complete year of this country showing us that they literally prioritize the wealth of people like Jeff Bezos above the lives of children, right? Like, this is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. This is not me going off the deep end like I have a tendency to do when I talk about these things. But if we honestly just slow down for 1 second and really just consider the priorities of this country based on the results. This is what I mean. Billionaires, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all of them, they made almost $1 trillion. They made like an obscene amount of wealth in this past year alone, right? Unemployment levels are at levels we haven't seen since the Great Depression. Right. The number of people who have died, we've seen more people die in World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War combined. Right. Yep. We've seen the results, right? The results show us that they're in Texas. When the power went out, the power didn't go out downtown. The power went out in the surrounding areas, the suburbs and the urban areas. Right. So they've shown us time and again where the priority is. And the priority is absolutely not in the well-being of the people. The priority is in the well-being of businesses, corporations, and the billionaires and the millionaires. And the real question that I'm always going to pose, and I'm at the stage in my life, man, I don't care anymore. I don't care who labels me what. They're going to label me what they want to label me. I'm at the point of like, how much longer are the people going to put up with this? Like, seriously, real talk. How much longer? Because we have a great capacity in this country. Human beings, not even just in this country, human beings have a fascinating and amazing capacity to adjust, to adapt, to survive. And that includes taking on all of this trauma. We talked about it on the show before. It's like we are living literally with a catalog of traumas day after day. More friends are dying, more neighbors are dying. You know, we're living with this. But I think that capacity to be strong at this juncture is a detriment, because at some point we have to say enough is enough in order for us to survive. See, a lot of times we absorb this trauma so that we can survive, right? If we engage in all of the sadness and all of the pain and mourning, if we engage at the right level of mourning that 500,000 lives deserves, we probably will all collapse under the pressure and the weight of that sadness.
But at some point, we got to turn it on its head and say, if we do not act, we literally won't survive, because they're already expecting by March. Dude, March is a few days away. They're already expecting over 600,000 people. So when is enough? Like, when is enough? I don't know. You know when it's enough, Brother Ben? Is when it starts affecting people directly. Once they start losing somebody that's close to them and their immediate family, that's when they'll start believing it's real. When it happened to me, I mean, I already knew it because I keep up with media. I watch stuff. I see stuff. So I'm already frustrated, agitated, mad, upset, all of that rolled up into one. Emotion just all over the place. But when it really hits home, when you have friends that you haven't talked to in years that you can't talk to no more, you can't see or say anything to them at all because they're dead now from a virus that could have been prevented and more lives could have been saved. But once it hits home, once it touches them directly, I guarantee you that's when they'll start caring. And at that point, it's going to be a little too late, man. A little too late.
And then the question is when do we collectively look at this government's inaction? Because you can actually, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here a little bit. If you go back to Twitter a year ago when we first realized this pandemic was coming and that there was pretty much nothing we could do to stop it from hitting us, one of the first things I just tweeted out a list of things that we had to do immediately as a country, right? Shut down, provide a universal basic income, provide a monthly check for the people to secure our supply channels, right? Our food supply chains. We have to secure those and make sure that people can stay at home safely. The reason I'm saying it like that is because it's not as though we did not know what to do in case of an emergency, in the case of a pandemic that we did not have a vaccine for. We knew what to do because, hell, I tweeted it. And then shortly thereafter, AOC tweeted the same thing. And then Chris Hayes from MSNBC tweeted the same thing. So it's not as though we didn't know what to do in order to save lives. It is the fact that this country did not care to do what was necessary because they were more. And here's the other thing. I mean, we just dig into it. These small businesses that everyone is saying, oh, well, we got to worry about the small businesses. You're right. The government has the capacity of writing them a check every single month. Hell, we subsidize the oil industry. We subsidize the sugar industry. We subsidize all kinds of industries to the tunes of billions of dollars every single year. We had the capacity to pay every single movie theater, every single barbershop, every single restaurant, every single bar. We had the capacity as a country to pay them monthly so that they could stay closed. But instead, what did we do? We left them open and we left workers exposed to it. And this is how we spread the now. And we have 500,000 people gone because we were not willing to do as a country what was necessary to be done in order to save and preserve as many lives as possible. And that's because our politics the politics of this country is so ridiculous and so infantile and so destructive that we very possibly will see 1 million people gone before the end of this pandemic. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back from this break, I have a lot of news stories to cover. Again, Rebecca is out today. She will be back tomorrow. For everyone who comes only to see her, she'll be back tomorrow. That said, more like it or not, when we come back after this.
Good morning, family, and welcome again. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Just in case y'all missed it the first time, got to make sure y'all say it again for y'all. Hope everybody is having a good day thus far. Don't worry, we got a great show, y'all. It's going to get this thing popping real soon. So make sure that you stay tuned. Make sure that you are hitting that like button. Hit the like button. Make sure that you comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff that you're supposed to do on social media, okay? Just like it or not, y'all. Let's get into some of this music.
Cross need to laugh more. I keep it 100 on dashboard. The live show need a passport, cause the beat bounce to the cap torn. Feel like I live it fast forward, but I asked for it. Misfit, got a quick lit on a crash course from the tattered garment to the tabloid. Fuck how I live it into existence. Might be ahead of myself, but the bank account did jump up a couple figures. But like nobody could with it. I'm a flight risk. I play among the stars in the Hollywood Hill, the space that you couldn't even get in touch with me. Praise faith that I stuck with it. Wave. No, I really can't complain. Everything is straight. I've been on the wave.
Shout out Rebecca in the chat. I see you. She had a chance to come in there and sneak on in. I appreciate it. We miss you, Rebecca.
Everything is straight. I've been on the wave. But everything I'm saying to the real thing. I've been living like I'm famous. Like I don't show my face. I'm jumping on the stage. Like I'm living in a daydream.
Miss Brenda, I appreciate that.
She only on me when she fake. She couldn't tell me I'm a fake. She ain't told no lie. She love it when I catch my case. She gone off the deep end. Pull up every weekend.
Multitasking and drinking my tea. Nicole, good morning, Nikki. Good morning, Gwen. That's my mama, y'all. I think she in there somewhere. Good morning. And good morning, sis Sugar Booger. I love her name. What's up, Sugar Booger?
No, I really can't complain. Everything is straight. I've been on the wave. Everything I
Courtney, Purple Rain Hearts. Good morning, y'all.
I could really use a change of scenery. Everybody smoking all the greenery.
And good morning, the sensation. Good morning, sensation.
But I'm still fly. I know. I'm still fly. Let's go. It could all be one.
Mara, good morning, Mara.
It could all was pills to make the man, but that poison's gonna chew you.
Right, Courtney. Afraid not. What's going on? Good morning. Hey, man, I love my pie, y'all. I love y'all so much.
I'm free. Can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out.
Good morning, Susan.
It's my time to ride it. I'm young. I'm free. Can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to
Dang, afraid not. That bear is like cute as hell. I love that.
It's my time. Cheers to all the haters, cause you proved to me that rising to the top was
I
my
like
destiny. And you can see whatever from behind me, but I'm still fly, I know.
Black Dragon, what's going on? Latif, good morning. Black Dragon, I think that's my brother, y'all. Good morning, my brother.
It could all be worse, I could be a hater like you.
You know what's funny, Martha? Like, I was singing all the music I played yesterday, I was singing it all dang on day, and it helped me through because yesterday was conference call day. It was freaking horrible.
Say it with your chest now, say it with your chest now. I'm free, can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it out.
Diallo, Tyler, good morning, y'all.
Free, can't nobody take me here and now. It's my time to run it out. It's my time to ride it out. It's my time. Oh, if you're on the bus, say yeah. Yeah. If you're on the train, say yeah. Yeah. If you gotta walk, say yeah. Yeah. Everybody's going somewhere. Yeah. young heart, I really don't care. Life has never really been fair. So put your fist up in the air. Say yeah. I'm young, I'm free. Can't nobody take me.
Man, bro, that just like is my goddamn song, man. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I said, put your hands up in the air, your fist up in the air. I don't know if he's talking about I don't know if he's talking about the revolution, but we throw it up.
We gonna throw it up regardless.
I don't know what he's talking about, but it's for me in my house. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, man. James, I'm gonna jump into some of this news, man. But keep all that music ready because you know how this world is. I want to start.
I got you, man.
I want to start by talking about the ridiculousness of the Republican Party as they deal with Donald Trump. On Tuesday night, Utah Republican Senator Mitt Romney told a New York Times columnist that he didn't know if Trump would run again in 2024 for the nomination, but he said, quote, "But if he does, I'm pretty sure that he will win the nomination." Let's take a look at that clip. Part of also what he said in that clip was an admission that he would not himself be supporting Donald Trump. But that begs the question, right? At what point would the Republican Party deal with Donald Trump in the way that they should have when they had the opportunity to impeach him? Let's take a look at that clip now.
Will President Trump continue to play a role in my party? I'm sure he will. He has by far the largest voice and a big impact in my party. I don't know about his family members, whether they intend to do that, but I expect he will continue playing a role. I don't know if he'll run in 2024 or not, but if he does, I'm pretty sure he will win the nomination.
You think he would win the nomination?
Oh, I think he'd win the nomination if he runs. I mean, a lot can happen between now and 2024. So, and I'm not great at predicting. I subscribe to Yogi Berra's philosophy in that regard. He said, I don't like predicting, particularly if the future's involved. So I don't really know what will happen there, but I look at the polls, and the polls show that among the names being floated as potential contenders in 2024, if you put President Trump in there among Republicans, he wins in a landslide.
Would you campaign against him?
I would not be voting for President Trump again. I haven't voted for him in the past, and I would probably be getting behind somebody who I thought more represented the tiny wing of the Republican Party.
Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem with this entire scenario. Republicans had an opportunity to do away with Donald Trump once and for all through the impeachment process. They refused to convict him. They refused to convict him for a very specific reason, and that reason is that they would rather deal with Donald Trump than to lose his support. I want to repeat that. Republicans are willing to lose their entire party to Donald Trump, to his madness, to his bigotry, which they're okay with. Let's be sure. Republicans, Mitt Romney in this case, he's no hero, obviously, right? In fact, this is a great example of the level of cowardice that exists in the Republican Party. All of them fell behind this Führer. They all fell behind this wannabe dictator. They all fell in line with a man who, quite frankly, insulted every single one of them, and not just insulted them from a political perspective. This man insulted their wives, their children, called them ugly, called them liars. I mean, Donald Trump literally attacked their very existence to the point where it couldn't be me. It simply could not be me, like Ted Cruz, who is continuously kissing the butt of Donald Trump, licking his boots, groveling before Lindsey Graham, of all people, groveling before Donald Trump. And they would rather deal with a dictator on the outside of the party over the next 4 years who's ready to come back and seize power than they would have to deal with the rabid Trumpers that Donald Trump created. Here's an even more bigger dilemma. The bigger dilemma is that they're probably right in their calculus. They are probably right when they are trying to make sure that they don't lose complete control, because they realize now Donald Trump has complete control of their party, which then begs the question, why would they not get rid of them, stop the hemorrhaging, cut their losses, and then go and do what's in the best interest, if nothing else, but for their own dignity and for their own. It's because they have no dignity. They have no integrity. They have no concern, no regard whatsoever to the fact that they have given power to one of the most destructive forces in this country, in this country's history. And a lot of people make excuses for Donald Trump saying he wasn't that bad. There's 400,000 people who died under his, 450,000. Let me correct myself. 450,000 people who died underneath Donald Trump's watch, specifically because he made it seem as if the coronavirus was no big deal. He made it a political thing. If you wore a mask, it meant that you were a coward or that you weren't a real patriot, right? So there are plenty of dead bodies right now in the ground as a result of Donald Trump, but Republicans still have not found their way to be able to distance themselves because they're more concerned with power than they are principle. They're more concerned with power than they are the people. They're more concerned with their own ambition and their own desire to dominate this country from a far right-wing radical perspective than they are anything else, even if that means that they have to grovel before someone who has nothing but pleasure and takes nothing but joy in the fact that he's insulted every single one of them. He's talked about every single one of their mothers. He's talked about every single one of their wives. He even talked about their children. And yet not a single spine is to be found in the Republican Party, not even Mitt Romney. That said, I want to move on to this next story, which is a little difficult. This week we mark the 1-year anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery's death. His mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, filed a lawsuit Tuesday night against the men charged with murder, along with the police and prosecutors who she claims conspired to protect his killers. The lawsuit states that Arbery's death was an execution, and neither McMichaels nor Bryan were initially charged while the police didn't bother to investigate. James, I want to bring you in on this conversation because it's, I didn't even realize it's been a year. And in fact, I didn't, so much has happened in this past year. It's kind of difficult. And these are the gentlemen on the screen, McMichael and Bryan. It's hard to place this one in the timeline. Like, I know where I was and what I was doing during Trayvon Martin. I know where I was and what I was doing during Michael Brown. Because of everything that's happened in this past year, and because they still haven't stopped killing us, it's kind of hard. It's really hard to place this in I don't remember where I was and what I was doing, but I do remember covering this story. And the fact that a year has gone by, and these guys now they have been charged, but initially Georgia wasn't going to charge them. They weren't. These guys were going to get off. Yeah. Where were you?
They weren't going to charge them at all. You know, like when you just said that, I'm just like, damn, what was I doing? Of course, I know I was in the house, but it just seems like it's all a blur and a run-in because, you know, it just seemed like everything was happening every other day or every other week. It just seemed like a black man was dead by police or some white supremacist, whatever you want to call them. So it just seems like you had Ahmaud Arbery, then you had Rayshard Brooks, George Floyd. It's just like, oh my gosh, bro, like what's going on? I remember around that time, dude, that was when I was in a horrible place. Like to the point where, bro, I was ready to go out and march, man. Man, I was ready to go and protest. And I'm one that normally doesn't do that. For one, with my leg, I can't do stuff like that. But I was ready to go hit the streets because it made no sense at all. But now, like you said, just thinking about it, it was just like that period of time, it was just a year ago, is such a blur right now.
Right. And it becomes even more of a blur because we try to not remember it. Like we make a concerted effort. You can bring those. We make a concerted effort on this show to not engage in those images, those videos. I don't share them on my timeline anymore.
Right.
We almost intentionally avoid those stories. And I know that sounds wild, but we don't have the luxury of covering it from the perspective of a safe distance.
Yeah.
We don't have safe distance from these stories, right? Many of the people in the audience, they don't have a safe distance from these stories because every time we cover one of these stories, we look at it and we realize, or it could have been my friend. In my case, it was one of my friends one time. And then so many people cases, Marcus Farrell, clickbaity, that his cousin, right, was killed by the police, right? So these stories are like extremely close to us. And it's not that we don't feel like they deserve coverage. It's because covering these stories adds on to that catalog of traumas that I was talking about, right? Every time we have to engage in it. And then I stop and think, we got to cover it, obviously, but just think about what these families are going through. It really drives, it pushes something in me when I think about how the killers are then turn around and then they become the heroes for half of America. With Darren Wilson, the murderer of Michael Brown. Not only did he get off, not even get a trial, but he got rewarded with like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now the Brown family, they have to take a step back and they have to look as this pathetic country venerates and celebrates the murderer of their children. I think about Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, dude still alive, running around the streets, right? Still talking cash money, and he's celebrated. He's celebrated by half of this country. Half of this country looks at the people who murder us and they think that they're heroes. And so while it's demoralizing and it's painful for us, I just kind of put myself in the shoes, for a split second, because I can't stay there long, of the parents and the siblings and the children and the friends who now have to view and watch what America does best. You know what America does great? It takes barbarians and turns them into heroes. It takes slave owners and turn them into founding fathers. It takes genocidal, homicidal maniacs and puts them up on posters, right? It puts them up on mountains, right? In completely spitting in the face of the indigenous people of this country, right? So this is what this country does best. It takes Rush Limbaugh and says that we should lower the flags on behalf of this monster because a monster died, right? And so it is insult to injury when we consider that this country not only will kill us in these streets, but this country will then turn around and celebrate our heroes and then tell us that we got to stand for a flag that never stood for us. And then tell us that we don't have the right to protest police violence when we turn around every day. We turn around, they're choking our children, killing our children, slamming our girls in classrooms on top of desks. But we're supposed to take a step back and celebrate these pigs. We're supposed to take a step back and celebrate these monsters. And when we call them out, then I become a radical. We become radicalized, like we're the threat when white supremacy itself is the threat in this, only to us, but also to the country itself. But this country is so damn twisted in everything that it believes that it would allow white supremacy to march up the steps of the Capitol January 6th, threaten the life of the vice president and everybody else who was there. And yet now we're supposed to look at them through a sympathetic lens. And in fact, some of them are looked at as heroes. So when I look at this story and I look at Ahmaud Arbery and his family as they try to seek justice, I can't help but see it in a long lineage, a long line of atrocities in this country where the victims are villainized and the perpetrators are celebrated. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to be speaking with several of our guests, and we also have a lot more news to cover. James, give us a quick break to lift our spirits. The truth, it'll set us free. Sometimes we got to cleanse our palate. We'll be back after this.
Right. All right, y'all, it's time for a Like It or Not classic. I had to bring this one out the vault. It's been a whole year or something. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat room, y'all. Make sure that y'all hit that like button, man. Brother Ben is over there preaching today, goddamn. He had me over here crying. God damn it, Ben. You're not supposed to do this. But shout out to everybody that's in the chat room, y'all. Make sure that y'all hitting that like button. Hey, also make sure that you download the Voices by Action Sprout app. Download the Voices by Action Sprout app, and you can get connected to Like It or Not. I would get that group code up for y'all, and I will let y'all know what it is momentarily. All right, y'all. But go ahead and get that app downloaded so you'll have it. Mama Bina, good morning, East Point neighbor, Southside. What's up, shawty? Brand, I love y'all too. Y'all know what I do to make sure I get my head clear, my head. Y'all, I start singing like I'm just like, you know, Beyonce or somebody. I get in my own world and I'll become like my favorite singer. Hashtag free, let's see. Hashtag free Azor. Rebecca says she wish she was here today. Hashtag free Azor. Stitchy and Stilettos Gamer, what's going on, sister? Hashtag free Becca.
I'm not sure I understand it, but everything seems brighter now than before. I don't know why I feel this way, but every time I hear your name, all my worries disappear. Yeah.
Come on, free Azor. Hashtag free Azor. Y'all better make that trend. Good morning, Alicia.
You make my dreams come true. Yeah. It's all because of you.
Kim, I appreciate that. Melody, thank you, ma'am. Good morning.
And I don't fall in love so easily, cause I don't wear
Dr. Claw, I am. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you feel the same, but every time I hear your name, my worries disappear.
Steve, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Man, y'all gonna make me cry in this thing. Oh my gosh. Freaking love y'all, dude.
You make my dreams come true. Yes, you do. It's all because of you, because of you, because of you.
Good morning, Melanie. Purple Rain Heart say don't put music out like this no more. It's all that clickety clack boom boom stuff. Sydney, good morning, ma'am.
It's all because of you.
Hey. All right, here's my brother from another mother, y'all. Brother Ben, what's up, sir? You there?
I'm here, man. I'm here. I'm just grooving, man.
Right.
Who is this?
Oh my gosh, man. Let me see. I wish it showed on my little mixer screen, but it doesn't. This is Dayon featuring Matt Floyd. Bro, man, that man can sing, bro.
That is doing something for me, man. Hashtag free
Like
Azor.
real.
I saw that in the chat room. Shout out to Rebecca.
You see it trending right now?
Yeah, we're gonna get it trending. Hashtag free Azor. She'll be back tomorrow. Let's go a little bit further in the news. I want to talk about an exchange that happened yesterday during a House debate over Biden's upcoming $1.9 trillion COVID stimulus bill. Representative Jim Jordan. He's a Republican representative from Ohio, all around scumbag, accused Democrats of being quote unquote partisan because it's a true story, because they're planning on passing a stimulus bill without any Republican votes. Democratic representative from Virginia, Gerry Connolly, shot back with this. It was pretty impressive. Let's take a look at it. And here
I mean, you were like I said, they had you as the worst guy on the planet back then, and now everything, it seems to be so much better now.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And all the gaslighting that we just heard does not change facts. Mr. Diamondstein, please move the mic close to your mouth. Thank you. Am I making this up, as Mr. Jordan apparently would have you believe, that the President of the United States last summer, Donald J. Trump, publicly said voting by mail would lead to massive fraud? Did he say that, or am I imagining that, Mr. Diamondstein?
I don't think you're imagining it. What I recall him saying at one point is he was going to make sure that the Postal Service got no financial COVID emergency relief, because then they would be able to more effectively deliver ballots.
Thank you. But the point is, it was Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, who was planting the idea, aided and abetted by disruptive changes proposed by a new Postmaster General and a compliant Board of Governors, that actually eroded public confidence in the ability to vote by mail. That wasn't a Democratic narrative. That was a Republican narrative by the President of the United States and his enablers. And oh, by the way, the inconvenient fact, Mr. Heiss would have you believe that it was partisans on this committee, and he quoted a number of Democrats, by the way, admitted Democrats. For the record, I'm an admitted Democrat and damn proud of it. I didn't vote to overturn an election, and I will not be lectured by people who did about partisanship.
So this is the game that they're playing, right? This is what we see all the time. We see Republicans have the uncanny knack of being guilty of the very thing that they accuse us of. In this case, they're accusing Democrats of being partisan because they're attempting to give relief to the American people during a pandemic, and they're having to do it without the help of Republicans. But we got the numbers. And since we have the numbers, don't take any regard for these scumbag politicians who are playing games with the lives of the American people. Mm-hmm. The 1.9 trillion is insufficient because at the bottom of the barrel, you're only giving Americans about $1,400, right? And yet and still, it's still too much for the Republican Party, for people like the gentleman in this video, for people like the Republicans across the board, name them. They are in opposition to this bill, and they're doing so for political theater at the expense of the American people. And so that requires that the Democrats use the budget reconciliation process to ram this through without a single vote from Republicans. And you know what? I'll do it again. Do it again, over and over and over again. Get rid of the filibuster. Do whatever is necessary to do what's in the best interest for the American people, because Republicans showed us over the last 4 years that they have no regard whatsoever to bipartisanship. They gave rich Americans, billionaires and millionaires, the biggest tax cut that we've seen in our lifetimes, and they did it along partisan lines. And so for them to lecture us at this point, and when I say us, I don't care if you identify as a Democrat, whatever you identify, for them to lecture us in regards to getting this COVID relief package out and to try to make people feel guilty about partisanship, it is exactly like Representative Connolly said, it is nothing more than gaslighting of the highest order. And when you see that, Democrats, y'all got to stop. You got to stop trying to work with these people. That's what I'm saying. James, there's literally no reason for a single Democrat, from Joe Biden down to whoever commissioner in your city, there is no reason for a single Democrat to work with Republicans when they are, number one, standing in the way of relief for Americans.
Right.
I don't care about your team. I don't care about your color. I don't care if you blue team, red team. I don't care if you a conservative, neo. I don't care. You have to clearly be able to see that they are standing in the way of families being able to feed their children, being able to stay in their homes, being able to stay in their apartments. That's what they're fighting against. And now they're saying that we are the bad people because we're like, you know what? Forget y'all. We'll do it without you. No, that's gaslighting of the highest order. And it's the exact thing that they need to make sure that nothing is done for the American people in a time when Americans can't take much more, man. James, right. I don't know how much more of this bullshit. Excuse me. I don't want to tip the swear jar today. I'm trying to hold on. I don't know how much more of this crap people can take. Like, right, to me, people keep asking me, like, Ben, you going to run for office? No, I'm not going to run for office because I'll get up there and lose my mind with the ignorance. It is a level of absurdity, man. Like, American politics is so infantile and useless and pathetic that we can't even take care of our own people. And when we try to take care of our own people, then they get on television and they get in the halls of Congress and they make these kind of statements about us playing games. You know, these are the type of things that drive me crazy, man, James. And this is why honestly, I think most people in this space, most people in general don't play around don't even care about politics. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who disconnect because they can see it on the surface for what it really is, which is ignorance. Take a listen to me. James, tell me what you're thinking, man.
Yeah, you're right, man, because for the longest, man, for the past, how old am I? Okay. Yeah, not going to go that far. Let's just say a long time ago, I didn't really care about politics. But when Trump got his tail in office, oh yeah, I had no choice but to care about politics at that point for the past 4 years because it was a crap show, to say the least, okay, for lack of a better word. So I had to. It was like watching comedy, but then I'm just like watching this country go down in flames. And then the 2 years leading up to him getting out of office, it just seems like it got worse. So I had to start paying attention. And I just wish that more people had that mindset, you know, but that's going to come from everybody getting out there and canvassing during these election times and everything else, canvassing and getting people involved because we have to get involved.
It's going to, and I hope it doesn't take this, what you said earlier, James. You said, like, with regards to COVID, it's going to require people to be impacted by it first
directly
before some people before they take it seriously. And in this case, when we're talking about American politics, can you imagine the level? I mean, what America is so good at is making people not realize the extent to which they already are impacted. In other words, the reason you're in the situation, America, that you're in now is literally because of politics. And so the only question remains is, how much more damage does this system have to do before before everybody just gets involved every single day? They can't afford to have an educated and active citizenry, right? Thomas Jefferson said that, one of the critical components is an educated body politic. They can't afford the government right now, the ruling elite, they cannot afford for us to have an educated and activated citizenry, because if we were all activated at the level that we need to be, they would no longer have power. That said, I want to break here and introduce our first guest, Brian Murphy. He's an associate professor of history at Rutgers University, Newark, and he is currently a contributing editor at Talking Points Memo and has been seen several times on MSNBC as a contributor. Professor Murphy is also in the process of writing a book about the corruption throughout American history, and he is leading a public history project to develop the Great Falls National Historic Park with the Organization of American Historians and the National Park Service. Brian, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on. Doing well.
Thanks so much. Great, man. And we'll have you up on the screen momentarily. Listen, I want to put these things in context. I need, if you could help me put some of these things into historical context, particularly as it pertains to this pandemic. Let's start there. The pandemic, I've been curious as to how much of the same level of absurdity we saw in 1918 that we're seeing right now. The anti-maskers, the politicization of it. We are getting, I don't know how long it's going to take for us to actually meet and supersede the death totals, but we are getting into some unbelievably historic and tragic numbers. And then all of the games that are being played by our political leaders at this point. Can you contextualize this from a historical perspective?
It's a great question. The thing is, we should know better by now, right? This isn't the first pandemic or epidemic that this country's had. And there were anti-maskers in the 1918 case too, right? There were people who denied it. There were people who wanted to pretend it would go away on its own, and it didn't. But we know so much more now, and the quality of information that's available on how to fight diseases and how to deal with this. Now people not only know that masks work, but they have a better idea of why they work. And they have access to much better masks, right? They didn't have an N95 in 1918. There were people smoking cigarettes through masks, putting holes in them in that pandemic, right? Because the most important thing about it is to be able to light one up when you just need to relax during the flu.
Right.
But I think the way this got dragged into what's different, I think, in this case is really the way that's got dragged into the way that everything gets dragged into this polarized narrative that we have now, where, there's a conservative way to approach this, and there's the way that everybody else deals with it. And it was kind of cringy at first, right? To think like, oh God, you could see what Trump was going to do with this. Like, they're going to make wearing masks uncool. And that's exactly what they did, right? And now here we are.
Here we are, 500,000. Well, actually, the number of people who are dying on a daily basis outdates our numbers by almost magnitudes of order. But I keep saying 500,000, but we're actually at about 550,000 at this juncture. And the historic. Do we ever learn? Like I know that's a kind of a broad question, a really lofty philosophical question, but to me, it's almost as if even if the masses reject common sense, like you said, we had an anti-mask movement in 1918, people cutting holes in masks. We've seen this before. You would think, though, that there would be an incentive amongst our leaders to do the right thing to preserve human lives. But if we take this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and we just look at how this government and the ruling elite have treated it, it suggests something entirely different. Like we can actually hypothesize that they don't give a damn about human lives. They only care about businesses and corporations and their financial interests. Do we ever move away from that from a historical perspective? And I don't know, man. Like, it's a depressing question because I already know the answer. Just talk to me about it.
It can't. I think. I think like when you frame it that way, you can really bum yourself out. I would say that there you can decide how that plays out based on what you do now, right? It doesn't have to play out. I think that this is the one thing I think, like, look, it's great to have like historians on a show, and we come on and we say, well, this is what happened in the past. Does that have to mean that how it plays out in the future? Absolutely not. I think one thing that we definitely saw this time around, and that we're still seeing, is that there's a real instinct on the part of capital to try to figure out how to do this. What is the bare minimum that we have to do to like get people to keep going to work? And the disconnect between what people actually want say that what people like say in polls that they want versus what is on the floor of Congress versus what people in Congress are like most people in Congress are willing to support. There's a real big gap there. And I think like if that gap wasn't there, I would feel more depressed. Right. But the fact that people want more, and I think like the fact that there's like you've more or less won the debate on deficits not mattering that much, and you've won the debate on inflation scare tactics, and you've won the debate on whether or not $15 should be the floor of what a minimum wage is. That wasn't there 10 years ago.
Right.
That is different. So it's I think it's easy to talk yourself into feeling pessimistic about this, but it's not. There are reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah. I'm smiling because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The people want more. The people are expecting more. So perhaps maybe the time frame that we should compare this to is the French Revolution. But no, before we go there, though, for those in the audience who understand what we're talking about, anyway, let's shift gears because I don't want to take you too much down that path. Not on this episode. Maybe we'll do it offline. But let's also talk about the context of what's going on with the Republican Party, right? The Republican Party clearly no longer the party of Lincoln. They haven't been the party of Lincoln in my lifetime. But now they're no longer even the party of Reagan. They're most certainly the party of Trump. Talk about that transition and how does that, as a historian, I know you don't project what's going to happen in the future, but based on what's happened in the past, like to me, I feel like this is a potential death knell in the Republican Party as it exists today, because for them to continuously chase after Donald Trump when he is himself a dividing factor in the party elite, at least, and he does maintain a very solid hold on the voting base of the Republican Party, but you have that same kind of disconnect between the will of the people and the will of the ruling elite. But in this case, it's almost in the opposite direction of what we just talked about in terms of the right direction and the wrong direction. The political elite in the Republican Party, some of them do want to get rid of Donald Trump. They just don't have the spine to do so. Talk about the future of the Republican Party in terms of how they have evolved since Ronald Reagan.
Rush is the bridge, right? Limbaugh. When I think about this, I think Limbaugh is the connecting thread that gets you from Reagan to Trump, and that it's sort of like this fake populism of doing what rich people in the party want, and trying to mobilize anger and fear as much as possible and try to keep it contained. And then they lost interest and ability to keep it contained. I think it's, I have friends in Europe who look at American history and just say, well, the Republican Party has become it's like a European Christian nationalist party, right? Like it's not we kind of lack the political language here to call it what it is. But if we were looking at this in a European context, it would be really obvious what the Republican Party is on track to become. It's funny. They're sticking with this guy who lost an election, and they're not going to have a conversation about how to build out. They're going to try to limit the number of people who can vote. And there's not going to be any soul searching. Thinking that like, these people are going to get disciplined because of what happened on the 6th. That isn't going to happen.
Right.
They're running with it. So they're not there's no, right now, I don't see any, there's no speed break on any of this. It's just this is only going to get worse for a while.
Is there any really, historical perspective for a strong man in the United States, obviously, because I mean, like you said, if we talk about Europe, there's plenty of examples. But a strong man who alone had the ability to completely redirect the focus and actually, no. Let me correct myself, because let me go back to what you started with. Rush Limbaugh is the bridge, right? And the Republican Party tried to contain that monster, and not just Rush Limbaugh himself, but literally the evils and the bigotry that he promoted and that made him rich and famous. They tried to
put a containment field around that energy. And then they found out very quickly, well, it took about 30 years, that they could not contain it and they could not control it. Now Rush Limbaugh is off the scene and Donald Trump is here to do whatever he wants. What happens historically to political parties when they become such an edge party? Like you said, if we compare it to Europe, it's a Christian nationalist party, right? And a very dangerous one at that. When the mainstream in this country is moving in one direction, even if it's moving slowly, right? We're becoming more, the demographics of this country is changing. If nothing else, the demographics alone suggest that this strategy of going behind Donald Trump and doubling down on this Christian nationalism, this faux Christian nationalism, is a losing proposition in one or two election cycles. Do you think that they are just saying, let's just grab one more victory? If they think that they can get a victory in 2024, they're literally not concerned about demographics putting them out of power from 2028 going forward. Do you think that's the strategy?
I think the thing that makes it different than the European context is that we've got the Senate, and they've got ways of controlling the Senate and holding on to it, and they've got gerrymandering. And you just don't have that in other. That is one of the features of the structure of how our republic is set up, and it's got there are some real shortcomings for what that means for representative government.
Right.
And people are going to have to, like, this is why that John Lewis voting right, I would get on that. You're going to run out of time if you don't do this soon, because they will try what they did on the 6th again, and it might work, right? Like if you had a few different people, if we had a Republican majority in the House of Representatives, I think it's a real open question whether or not Biden would have taken that oath, right?
Right. That's a terrifying notion, right? And we were very close. Like the pressure, they would have called it pressure from the people versus an insurrection. If there was a Republican majority in the House, they would have called it pressure, the will of the people. And no, you're right, right? They sincerely, most certainly, and would have thrown that election to Donald Trump or used their machinations, the congressional machinations, to give it to Donald Trump, which really then, in hindsight, makes the 2018 election probably one of the most significant ones in terms of the course of American history. And so. Sure. We have a lot of difficult days ahead, but we can leave it with what you said. If we frame it in the context of what the powerful are doing, it can be depressing. But you're saying that we should frame it in the context of what the people are saying. And the people are not fooled. The people want more. The people are expecting more. Brian, could you just speak to that last point and then tell the audience where they can find your work and how they can support you?
I think like that. There's a real, you mentioned Jefferson at the top of the segment, and Jefferson talked a lot about vigilance, and I think the idea that people who weren't necessarily political or paying attention to this a couple of years ago, like COVID, brings it all into focus about what government can do and how they can get it wrong and how they can get it right. That we've had a real. I think like the latter half of the 20th century took there was a lot of stuff that government used to do that moved out of the sphere of government and into like the private sector and NGOs and foundations and areas that aren't as accountable. And so it's harder to, in a lot of ways, it's harder to do. The sphere of elective representative politics is smaller in some ways than it was in the New Deal era. But in a way that we haven't really thought about or talked about. So it's like this confusion about what the role is.
Right.
I think there's a real moment here to rethink that. And there are a lot of younger members of Congress who think about this in a much different way, right? Than anybody, than the older guys do.
Right.
And I think that's a really hopeful sign. My people want to find me at Rutgers University, Newark. I work on, I got a new project on the history of the Passaic River and political economy. I do some work on corruption. I'm working on a project about teaching the Constitution to undergraduates here. And I got some cool projects going on. So if people want to find me, they can find me on Rutgers' webpage and drop me a line.
Absolutely. Brian Murphy, historian, scholar, thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Hey, we'll be back. Great to be here.
Oh, pleasure is ours. We'll be back with more Like It or Not right after this short break.
Or Apple, just search for the Voices by Action Sprout app. Once you are in, you just enter our group code, which is 213-756. Again, 213-756, and it said that they can't hear me. Okay, can y'all hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, I need y'all to drop a line here in the chat if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Bubba.
Okay, boom. Okay, good. All right. Like I was saying before, I said so much. We'll say it again. All right. Make sure that you search for the Voices by Action Sprout app on your phone so you can be connected to the Like It or Not group. What you want to do, you can scan either one of the QR codes that are on your screen right now from your prospective phone, or you can search for the Voices by Action Sprout app on your prospective Play Store, that's Google Play Store, or the App Store with Apple. Once you have either of the apps downloaded, you can use our group code 213-756 to be connected to us, Like It or Not. And from there, you can send us pictures, videos, clips, stories, songs, whatever you have, and we can get it played on the air, y'all. But be it known that if you do send it to us, 9 times out of 10, we're going to play it on the air. So if it's something that is embarrassing to you, please be it known, we're going to play it on the air. So make sure that you download the Voices by Action Sprout app, y'all, as soon as possible. I'm having too much fun. Y'all know that, right? Because I just love y'all so much. Shout out to everybody this morning that's joined us. Afraid Not came in and said, that's a lot of audio. I know, I was talking for a long time anyway. Goku, what's going on, brother? Good morning.
Forever and now, I'll never bring you sorrow. So don't let me down. I'll chase away your shadows, away from the crowd. I give you my tomorrow, forever and now.
Marco, sir, I appreciate that.
From my cell phone, sounds like it's your ringtone. I get chills when you call, wanna give you my heart. So I might talk all night long. Show me affection, attention, and care. Losing the tension, and baby, I swear I'll give you my tomorrow, forever and now. I'll never bring you sorrow. So don't let me down. I'll chase away your shadows, away from the crowd. I give you my tomorrow, forever and now. Chills, yeah, I can chills when you come. Wanna give you my heart.
Make sure that y'all are hitting that like button, y'all. Hit the like button, hit the like button, hit the like button, and make sure that you share and subscribe so you know when Like It or Not is going down, y'all. Streaming on all platforms, so make sure that you hit the like button, y'all. Subscribe.
Forever and now, I'll never bring you sorrow. of holding me down. I chase away your shadows, away from the crowd. I give you my tomorrow.
Yes, mother, that is. It's the same picture that's been on my wall now for almost a year.
Look, down low, up top, on my way to the bag at the bus stop, some blow, some flop, I ain't get my shot yet, but I'm gon' pop, don't stop, keep going, I got this mantra in my head, it make me keep flowing, pour shots, keep pouring, it's no more vodka in my head, got no release for it, I see a flip, I make a flip, I'm a hustler, I just hit a lick, this that double shift, this that overtime, I'm on my job, player, you know I was born to grind. It's for my people standing up until they back hurt. It's for my people standing up to get the cash, sir. My minimum wage is on my cash.
Susan Courtney, I appreciate that, y'all.
I need the bag first.
Thank you, Miss Patricia. Sarah Gone, I appreciate that.
They must have never heard me rap. It's a fact word. The system got me on my back. What's the answer? Down low, up top, on my way to the bag at the bus stop. Some blow, some flop. I ain't get my shot yet, but I'm gon' pop, don't stop, keep going. I got this mantra in my head and make me keep flowing. Pour shots, keep pouring. It's no more vodka in my head, got no release for it. Up, son, out. I don't wanna breathe, I just wanna pass out. Reaping what I sowed, that's what I'm doing, cousin. Keeping to my own's not how I'm moving.
Yeah, that was my spirit animal. The monkey with the headphones on it that represented me and my music.
How can I help you? How can I shelf you? Dealt with wealth, please help me.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I can't wait for y'all to see my other. How can I say this? My other projects. There we go. That I have in my head that I'm working on bringing to fruition.
Up top, on my way to the bag at the bus stop. Some blow, some flop. I ain't get my shot yet, but I'm
Christopher Shaw, appreciate that.
Don't stop, keep going. I got this mantra in my head, it make me keep flowing. Pour shots, keep pouring. It's no more vodka in my head, got no release for it.
Yeah, man, I remember being so naive when life was good, weather and palm trees. Back in the day, you were everything I need. But then along came a time when you crushed my dreams. Oh yeah, you played me like a fool when you made me believe that the line between love wasn't thick enough to read. Oh yeah, you see we in despair, crime everywhere. You're selling false hope cause you just don't care. Nah, you just don't care. Nah, you just don't care. You just don't. Still selling false hope cause you just don't care. House.
I am Ian MT30. First time viewer, welcome. So make sure y'all show Ian some love. Welcome to the stream, Mike and not, sir.
I never made the party.
You have come on time. So welcome.
I'm feeling like Badu, the way I carry my baggage. This heavy load on my shoulders might turn me to a savage. Is that why I gotta fight to get respect? That's a shame. Who's to blame? I don't know, but all I know is that we still rocking them chains, still taking that wheel, still trying to get paid, still trying to find God, still trying to act safe. Yeah. Put a youngin' on the corner. Now
it does give me just the two of us kind of vibes.
Yeah. These are all the terrible conditions that we bind and we put inside the minds
just the two of us.
Can't you see we in despair? Look around, we got crime everywhere. But you still sell false hope, cause you just don't care. No,
well, listen to what he's saying though.
No, you just don't care. You just don't care. I hope my people can really go make a difference instead of being the people incarcerated in prisons. I never.
Marion Anderson, I appreciate the love. Thank you so much.
This one goes out to Warren, my granny, Justice and Crystal. Hold up, if you ain't adept, careful with your stuff. Get your soul in line, chasing after checks. If you ain't inclined to say what's on your mind, please don't throw your stones at me for speaking what's on mine. Man, I still don't feel that comfy in my own skin. It's hard to find your self-worth as a broken kid. These frames never held images of my own kin. That's why I rap sheet the only place we fit it in. Yeah, you can go to court or you go on that court. You do 9 to 5 or you go passport. Can't represent
Goku, leave me alone.
If you could get your place, you might turn to Emmett Till. Watch him legislate to execute my brothers.
Extra as hell, you know I am, man.
For me to heal, I went looking for for a Beverly when I went to the hills. But I came back with a diamond and a couple dollar bills. Now they got me saying, oh yeah, don't you see we in despair? Got crime everywhere, dark clouds in the air. If you don't know the game.
LD, I appreciate the love, man. Glad that you are safe.
I remember being so naive. Back when life was compared to good weather and palm trees. Back in those days, you were everything that I thought that I needed. But then there came a time when you crushed my dreams. You really played me for a fool when you made me believe that the line between love wasn't thick enough to read. Cause you know they say, there's a thin line between love and hate.
Don't you see we in despair? Got crime everywhere, still selling false hope. But you just don't care, no you just don't care.
I'm trying to touch the states this time. 2021. Yeah, show him I can still rap though.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. Run it up. First it was the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the bag like here I go again. Outside since the chirp, now the camera phone. Told you I'ma keep the channels on. Why you acting different when the camera's on? Why you acting different like your paper long? Every day I wake up and I thank God. Bad decision got you wishing you could say nah. I city gritty, you could get hit any day now. On my mama, I'm on my friendly way. With some 20s, 50s, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, zillions. I'm talking Amazon money, talking so much money I could mess around and buy Amazon. I've been winning, I'm like, why me?
Hey man, if you are not up to dancing at this point, man, y'all tripping. It's 10 o'clock now, y'all should be woke.
I roll G's and they grind me. Now I'm on my game, nothing is the same. Who am I to blame? Money made me change. Cardi in my ring when I'm
it is about, dude. I discovered this last night.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one. Welcome back. Welcome back to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth and not care who doesn't like it. I'm excited to be joined by Representative Chris Rabb. He's a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, representing parts of Philadelphia County. He has served in that office since January 2017, and he is a return guest here on this channel. Representative Rabb, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming back. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm glad to be back on the show.
It's always a pleasure to discuss these issues and topics with you. We've talked extensively about your work there in Philadelphia with regard to reparations, and we'll perhaps, if we have enough time, we'll get to that. But I want to start with something that I know you're passionate about and that we had a chance to speak about yesterday with regard to the Biden administration and their immigration policies. More specifically, the consistency that we've seen from one administration to the next, and in this case, it's almost as if those of some of us, not all of us, but some of us who called out Donald Trump correctly for his immigration failures and bigotry are in a way not being morally consistent in this moment. Would you speak to that for me?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And you know, this is a really important issue right now, as a lot of people are still gloating or in the afterglow of the success of Biden coming into office and the departure of Donald Trump. It's very easy to lose focus, right? The transition to a new administration is an important one, but it's not the end game. The end game is just policies that help everyone in this country, and particularly the most vulnerable. And if the person who you voted for says that they're going to do something during the campaign trail, it is our responsibility to hold them to account, as well as the fourth estate. When we talk about journalism and the media, is to say, okay, are they consistent with what they said on the campaign trail to what they're actually doing now that they're running in administration? And so, you know, when you looked at the pictures and the videos of immigrants in cages, a lot of folks were really salivating and saying, this is a perfect example of how evil Donald Trump is, and, you know, conservative Republicans and so forth. But we did not have the same level of scrutiny or concern when Barack Obama was doing more or less the same thing. He was called the deporter in chief because he deported more families over his 8 years than his Republican predecessor over his 8 years. And look, you got to be morally consistent. Either you support immigration, like comprehensive immigration reform and doing what's best for families, irrespective of their country of origin, or you don't. Is it bad when it's someone, a rapist, bigot, xenophobe like Donald Trump? Does it make it any better that the person who was doing it was a Black president who we like, right? This we got to be. We have to raise our game, and I'm specifically talking to civic-minded Black folk, right? That this is so much bigger than party. This is so much bigger than representational politics. You know, I have a friend, Roberto Lovato, who you should have on the show, who's written a memoir called Unforgetting, rather. And he's from El Salvador, grew up in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And he has been talking for years that we have to be really concerned about people of color who are rising to positions of power, who are essentially the new faces of empire, right? Right. If we oppose empire, if we oppose racialized capitalism, which is really redundant, if we oppose imperialism and militarism, the same things that Dr. King got assassinated for, frankly. If we support the radical King and we get upset at white folk and mainstream media for sanitizing Dr. King after the 60s, then how are we allowing ourselves to be complicit in doing the same thing in the 21st century? And that's exactly what's happening.
I gotta hold you there because, man, you just opened up a can of worms. Let's go. Let's you open up Pandora's box. Let's dig into it, because I think one of the first problems is, it's a twofold problem. The civic-minded Black folks that you're speaking of, who are afraid or hesitant or squeamish, or however you want to describe it, they're not inclined to bring criticism. And it's not just civic-minded Black folks. It's just, Democrats in general, because we came from such a hard 4 years, and then we came through a very difficult election process, and they're not ready. I don't know if they will ever be ready, but they're not quite ready to hold Joe Biden accountable, right? And that itself becomes an impediment to those of us. But you said something there. You said if you oppose empire and racialized capitalism, which is redundant, my thing is perhaps maybe they don't really oppose it, not because they don't see the inherent evil in it, but because honestly, the media that they consume never talks about empire, never talks about capitalism, never talks about any of these things, never talks about the consistency in certain policies across every single administration. You're going to see the budget, the defense budget in every single administration increase every single time, bipartisan. You're going to see drones. You're going to see drone strikes in the global South across. We're just waiting for them. If they haven't already occurred, they're occurring soon, right? There's a consistent theme that goes across every single administration, and that is a very thing that comes home to our streets when the defense industry sends those tanks to Ferguson, and they send those tanks into Atlanta, into Fulton County. So speak about it a little bit deeper, because that really is the rub right there.
Absolutely. What are the systems of oppression that have been codified into federal law that have weaponized every administration since their enactment? And when we talk about immigration, we can't talk about immigration without talking about Bill Clinton. Now, a lot of folks joke that he was the first Black president, and I can't stand that stuff. Oh, goodness gracious. Right. So, but when there's something that's novel to the electorate, something that breaks up the monotony, they get interested, particularly when there's such a lack of media and political literacy in this country, that when you have someone who kind of doesn't fit the mold, then they get attention. And sometimes that works to advantage. We saw that with Bill Clinton and his affinity to Black folk and Black culture, being from poor boy from Arkansas. Whether it's Donald Trump being, doing everything differently, right? Barack Obama was a novelty in terms of, he was really the first presidential candidate to use social media on a vast scale. I guess you could say Howard Dean did, but he didn't quite make it. So we have these examples of novelties, but the reality is it's overlaying a structure that is deeply problematic. And Bill Clinton pushed forward a bill that was enacted, I believe, in '96 that basically criminalized immigration. And that was the basis for everything that came thereafter, including what happened under George W. Bush, the 8 years under Obama, and Donald Trump. And when we talk now and we see how oppressive these government structures are, most notably ICE, people are saying, well, let's abolish ICE. And Joe Biden can just change the name, but the structures remain the same. It's nothing inherent in ICE that makes it bad, right? ICE is just the term. You could, whatever existed prior, right?
Right.
Could have been just as bad, and it was. Perhaps they've tweaked it to make it worse, but fundamentally, that law in the mid-1990s allowed for Democrats and Republicans thereafter to do what's happening now. And because the Biden administration is calling it something else, I forget what the euphemism is. It's more like, detention family.
They're calling them facilities instead of it's absurd. Yeah,
it's right, but it's marketing. And I understand those of us who don't want to feel like we are part of sabotaging a brand new administration. But some of the most important decisions happen early on, like who our nominees are, right? Who the presidential nominees for these different agencies. And it will set the course for everything else for the next 4 to 8 years. And so this is the time where we have to get out of our comfort zones and stop being complacent and say, why did we want Biden, or why did we want Trump out? However you want to tackle that issue, and say, what do we do now en masse and in a concerted and strategic manner around the issues we care about? And listen, Black folk, we need to understand the importance of immigration, because guess what? There are Black folks who immigrate too. This is not a Mexican exclusive thing. This is not a Central American exclusive thing. And even if it were, this whole centuries long, divide and conquer between Black and brown folk, we walk ourselves right into it when we say they're taking our jobs, right? When in fact, there's little to no evidence that that's the case. Now, you can say that any immigrant group that comes here is taught how to be anti-Black if they don't already have a lot of practice before they got here. That is a fact, right? And Richard Pryor used to joke about it, right? You learn how to be a good citizen by learning how to say nigger, right? He was saying that in the 70s. So while these things are true, the enemy is not undocumented immigrants. And all undocumented immigrants are not Latinx. And we have to understand what we have in common, because if we have any critiques of empire, of capitalism, of structural inequality, then we are pointing our fingers at the wrong groups. We need to be pointing at the corporations who exploit these workers. And because of racist foreign policy for decades,
that's it.
We create the instability in these countries that push these folks towards us because they have nowhere else to go.
And that's the absurdity of it, right? So because the absolute worst place for some of these families to go or come is America. But it's so much worse where they are that they're willing to take those chances and take those risks. And it's bad in their countries of origin, literally because of the United States foreign policy. And so perhaps then, Representative Rabb, the conversation has to continuously pivot back to helping people really understand what they're supporting when they stand and sing the national anthem and they say the Pledge of Allegiance. And when they think that now that they have a blue president, that it's going to automatically be better than when we had a red president. But red or blue, these policies of imperialism and these policies of racial capitalism, but capitalism in general, especially our foreign policy as it pertains to immigration and us creating the conditions that they have to immigrate, that's on us. That's America. That's what America does. That's what Barack Obama did. That's what Donald Trump did. That's what George W. Bush did. It's just that the only difference is degrees of derangement, right? George W. Bush, and this is the thing that drives me crazy, because you have Democrats now who are in love with George W. Bush because he wasn't Trump. But George W. Bush literally destabilized the Middle East for the foreseeable future, for generations to come, right? And so we have degrees of derangement in terms of how they execute it, but it's still being executed. Barack Obama continued those wars, right? He expanded those wars. He continued the drone strikes. They continued and they expanded underneath Donald Trump. And we got a couple of days to see when these reports start coming in exactly how much we continue to expand this imperialism abroad. But people don't like that conversation, because that conversation takes the platform from it knocks their feet from right underneath them, because they no longer have a ground to stand on. And it requires, I think this is what it is once you realize what America really is, it requires you to critique, criticize, and oppose just about everybody in DC and even in your state houses.
You were so on point, and I want to give an example of something that we do just as human beings and as English speakers. There's a term that I used for decades, an expression. It was, well, we could kill two birds with one stone by doing X, Y, and Z, right? Said it for decades, until I was at a progressive communicators retreat, and somebody was making a similar point and said, you know what, we could feed two birds in one hand. And I said, what? And she looked at me, she's like, we can feed two birds in one hand by doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I like that. I mean, I don't need to kill two birds with one stone. Why would I need to do that? Like this. And I'm not a pacifist. I'm not a animal rights person per se, but there's no reason to say something just unnecessarily violent to make a point that has nothing to do with violence. And as an example, another example, I don't say the Pledge of Allegiance because I don't believe it. I think it's a farce. So I don't say it, and I don't let my son say it either. I want them to be critical thinkers. So if they actually believe in what they're saying or what's in the pledge, then they can say it. But don't do it just because everyone else is doing it. We have this pattern of just agreeing or accepting or embracing things that we've never critically pushed back on. And as a result, we need to do the same thing regarding serious policies, whether it's immigration or healthcare reform or worker rights or issues around reparations. One of the reasons I talk about reparations is I'm trying to talk to people outside of the Black community about reparations and how the history of racial injustice negatively impacts white folk. And that's a conversation that most folks aren't used to having. And it shakes people up. So they just take a step back and say, well, what is reparations? All I know is I'm triggered when I hear a Black person say it because I think they hate me or they're angry or they want to take my money or they say I don't work hard, yada, yada, yada. We can break those things down. We can actually begin to have conversations to move us in a substantive manner in ways that we never do because we say the same terms. We have the same conversations. We have the same assumptions and we don't push back. And this is not about hating Barack Obama or saying that he's this or that, but it is acknowledging the policy choices he made. He made those decisions and saying he may be smart. He may have a big heart. He may love his family. He may love Black folk, whatever. But the policies he embraced are a legacy in this country that we must shut down and no one gets a pass.
Well, here's why it's so important, because the policies that he implemented were some of the exact policies that Donald Trump utilized for his power grab, right? What he utilized for everything he did on the international stage. Like it is the habit of the American government, particularly the president, to amass power unto him or herself and to use that power almost as an imperialist president. And it is enhanced by the fact that we have a cowardly Congress that has no desire to actually hold the president accountable as the Constitution says that it should. And so we have to be able to look at the continuous line from Eisenhower all the way to now in terms of American imperialism on the global stage in a really dominant hegemonic way, right? We have to look at that consistent theme. And that means we have to look at our favorite president's culpability in those things. Here's one thing I want you to highlight a little bit more before we run out of time. This idea of us just taking something that we heard and repeating it because it's convenient and it's useful for that moment. It really brilliant what you said. Instead of us, because I'll try to make that change, right? 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 birds, 1 hand, right? We just hear things and we go with it because it's convenient without critically analyzing it and understanding. We hear and we see, Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, right? Donald Trump was absolutely the person we needed to get rid of. But our critical analysis can't just stop there, because if you ask yourself why you wanted to get rid of Donald Trump, then actually, no, let me turn on the dime. Maybe perhaps some of them only wanted to get rid of Donald Trump because they wanted a Democrat in office and they don't care about anything else. Maybe we got to take that in consideration. For some people who believe that they are civically engaged, what they're really engaged in is just another game of sports.
Right. How many layers of the onion are you prepared to pull off, right? And most folks just want to pull out the outer one because it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of work to think about the complexities and the vicissitudes of how our government is run, how the electoral system operates, and how it impacts us and, frankly, our level of privilege, right? Because, it's not just white folk who have privilege. It's anyone who has a quote unquote good job. And my grandfather used to say the worst thing for a smart young Black person is a good job, because they become complacent. They don't critique the structures that actually oppress all of us, perhaps those with the higher incomes less so, but we have a precarious state as well. And so we have to get out of our comfort zone. Biden being the president is more than incrementally better than his predecessor. I will say that. It is not a radical shift. He did not run as a radical. He did not run as a progressive. He is using more progressive language than any presidential candidate, viable presidential candidate in a long time, but he is not doing anything. That's not his role, right? He won because he won the primary because people thought the white working class folk in purple states would be more accepting of him than a Warren or Bernie Sanders, right?
That logic. Well, yeah. No, I'm thinking. Did you say vicissitudes? This is one of my.
I did throw that in there. I wasn't sure if you caught that.
I caught that. That's my TD Jakes word. I got that from TD Jakes years ago. The vicissitudes. Right? I hate to go off on a tangent on such a serious conversation, but the fact remains is that while we are in a better position now, simply because we don't have an all-out fascist dictator in power, I want to. This moment in American history requires critical thinking and nuance, and it requires us to have integrity in what we fight for. And one of the main things I'm hearing you say is that we have to have moral consistency. If it was wrong underneath Donald Trump, it's got to be wrong right now. We only have a few minutes left, but just speak about the requirement that we have for moral consistency, and then tell the people how they can get up with you.
Sure. I think, listen, it's very easy to lambast politicians, and I'm an elected official, so I'm used to it with 4 years in office, and it's a well-deserved reputation. But what is our responsibility in terms of co-governance? The things that matter most in between election cycles. How do we make sure that the people who are in elective office uphold their oaths and do what they said they were going to do on the campaign trail? And it should not matter what their political party is or their ethnicity. Right is right. So I don't care who's talking about a particular issue, as long as they're on the right side and that they are doing it in good faith. And because sometimes folks like to say things like, oh, we're going to do community policing, and not define what community policing is, and not provide any metrics as to how community policing has actually helped or hurt issues around crime or community safety, right? So the rhetoric is not good enough. In fact, it is often used to distract because the underlying policies are a continuation of the legacy of white supremacy and oppression that has existed.
Ooh. Whew. Well, don't tell the people how to get up with you yet, because I need us to, we might go over time, because I wonder if our good aunties and uncles who are so in love with the Democratic Party realize that their inability to criticize, not just critique, but literally hold these clowns' feet to the fire, emboldens white supremacy, emboldens the police state, emboldens the very thing that we are having to march against every day in every city across this country. I wonder if those people who are infuriated by the fact that you just said what you said realize that their inability to hold that cognitive dissonance and resolve it by speaking out against it, that they are themselves complicit with white supremacy.
That's a hard thing to swallow, but it's no less true. And we can summon that courage because we've done it before. Nobody's more courageous than Black folk, right? To be the conscience of this country, it requires a lot of courage. And but we have compartmentalized our courage. And now it's time to expand it into the electoral and policy realms to say, this hurts Black folk. This hurts marginalized communities. This hurts the promise of America and our participatory democracy. But we have to be more civically literate. We need to understand and connect the dots between what Bill Clinton did, not what he said, not what he did on Arsenio Hall, but what he actually did in office, and show folks, right? Because people are busy, people are tired, people are distracted. It's our responsibility collectively to let people see the genealogy of oppression and how we, by our silence or complacency, make it worse. We have that power, and that's the good news. We have the power. We don't need corporate media to do that. We don't need the Democratic Party to do that. We don't need anyone. We are the leaders we've been waiting for. And there are groups who are already doing that kind of work, but we have to continue.
Yeah. Wow. And I'll dovetail it with this. While Bill Clinton was playing and wooing Black America on Arsenio Hall, he was lining up to execute a Black man in order to get elected into the White House. Representative Rabb, tell people how they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Rep Rabb, R-E-P Rabb, R-A-B-B, like rabble-rouser.
Hey, we need a few more rabble-rousers around here. Listen, Representative Rabb, thank you so much for joining us. We will always love to have you back anytime you're available.
Thank you so much.
Folks, that is it for Like It or Not today. James, you there, man? You rocking with us?
I'm here. Yeah, man, I can give y'all maybe 10 minutes or so before corporate America gets on my damn nerves.
That's all I've got. Rebecca will be back tomorrow. Rebecca, we got to get all of y'all away from these corporate overlords. These
man, please, immediately.
Look, go to in the interim, while we get our system set up for this show specifically and for Eastern 42nd, go to patreon.com/the BPD show. Become a supporter that way, and that way we can get one step closer to making sure we can party for the third hour. I'm gonna be honest with you. I want to do a third hour. I want to do a third hour with live callers, right? But I can't ask Bubba and Rebecca to do a third hour with me if I don't start paying them full-time pay.
Full-time pay, right? With a little benefits, maybe benefits too. Yeah.
Benefits and some health, some retirement. So we gonna get a little bit closer to that, and you can help us do that by going to patreon.com/the BPD show. And James, I'm getting out the way. It's all you, man.
I appreciate it, brother. Make sure that you are taking a screenshot of that slide right now on your screen. This is the way that you can become a Patreon of the show and get ad-free and exclusive content, y'all. This way that you'll always know when Like It or Not is going down. You'll have exclusive access to the Patreon parties that I DJ, and my God, today. You don't want to miss it, y'all. Make sure that you join the Patreon. Patreon.com/the BPD show. Patreon.com/the BPD show. So here we go, y'all. We're going to get into a good 10 minutes, and then off to corporate America I go. But again, thank you so much to Representative Chris Rabb. We greatly appreciate you coming today. Enjoyed that interview, y'all. Hey, and if you enjoyed it too, make sure that you hit that like button. And Ben, I promise, this song has nothing to do with what we just talked about. The first line he said, tell him I need my money right now.
Don't waste my energy. I don't got much, don't be wasting all my energy.
Nikki, you know I do what I can.
Get close to me, my heart is right, don't question my integrity. No, I thought we would be just fine, and I thought your heart was like mine, but let me find out you've been going around throwing shots, running plots. Come on, man, tryna block my blessings, and only for comparisons. What's from me won't be from me. Yeah, I'ma go through just to grow through. But pay me what you owe me for I make what you've been saying about me true. Tell them I need my money right now. Probably that you stay stole out my crown. Sorry to tell you, I know my value. I'm gonna recoup, yeah. Don't waste my loyalty. I let you in back then because I couldn't see, but now it's clear you ain't ever been true to me. My intuition ain't ever lied, I had to leave. Handle your business, do what you think you need to do to get your revenge. But you won't break me, God, that's my witness. Past the point of no return, I'm on a mission. Tryna block my blessings, but no need for comparisons. What's from me won't be from me. Yeah. I'ma go through just to grow through. But pay me what you owe me for I make what you've been saying about
Nat
me.
M most definitely here's to a productive and relaxing day. Absolutely.
Probably the juice they stole out my crown. Sorry to tell you, I know my value. I'm gonna recoup, yeah. Don't waste my. Hey, slide to the left, slide to the right. Rock with me, baby, we can do this all night. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Come on, come on, come on. Hey, slide to the left, slide to the right. Rock with me, baby, we can do this all night. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Come on, come on, come on. Hey, slide to the left, slide to the right. Rock with me, baby, we can do this all night. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Come on, come on, come on. Hey, slide to the left, slide to the right. Rock with me, baby, we can do this all night. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Come on, come on, come on. Yeah, right hand is wrapped around your waist. I love the way that you been twirling to the bass. Moving sideways on a Friday. DJ playing all of your favorites. I'm digging your flavor. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth, so much. Sellout Sensation, I see you. Courtney, what you say you was about to leave and then it came on, didn't it? Susan, I did.
Slide to the right, come on, come on, come on. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Rock with me, baby, we can do this all night. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Come on, come on, come on. Hey, slide to the left, slide to the right.
Driving around in California,
Slide to the right, come on.
looking for something to make me stay.
Purple Rain Hearts, I will find out for you and I'll let you know if I got you tomorrow, okay?
Something I could never get replaced. Don't need you to save me, but I just really need to be saved. I'm just so sick of waiting for any luck to come my way. Feel good, be good, stay good, and
out to everybody that joined us this morning. Make sure that y'all are hitting that like button before you leave out today.
I'm an odd person. I run in dark circles. I would love a long life because I love how life's worthless. I'm a paint purple because blue's overrated. We all outdated. We all so jaded. We all lost love like love's our savior. It's a dark place when it's all about the paper. Cutting pretty cards before they deal you something heinous. I've been steady sitting on my assist. I'm so contemporaneous. In love with my behavior. Really, I could probably try to be something greater. Good on my favorite. You could tell me something different, but I probably wouldn't listen. No, I probably wouldn't listen.
Just give it up. I'm not your girl and I never will be. Don't call me up. Don't waste your time because I'll be.
Leave y'all with a little reggae vibe. Make sure, y'all, that you download the Voices by Action Sprout app. You can scan either one of the QR codes on screen, depending on what phone you have, and it will take you directly to the app in your app store. Once you get that app, make sure you enter our group code, which is 213-756. 213-756, y'all. Always become part of the Like It or Not community. I did do that typical club DJ. You think you about to leave? No. Let me go ahead and drop that, back that ass up before you leave.
When I'm alone, nothing can stop me. You should go out, meet someone else, someone who gets you. Don't stick around. I'm pretty wild. I don't do monogamy. Don't get me wrong. You and I could have fun together when I feel done with having fun on my own. It's better to care for yourself, not rely on somebody else. So don't get me wrong, I'm just riding alone. Just walk away, cause I got no intentions of hanging out with you tonight. Don't look my way. If you want a problem, I'll give you a problem, alright? If you want love, just give it up. You got the wrong girl. You got the wrong, you got the wrong, you got the wrong girl, girl. You got the wrong, you got the wrong, you got the wrong girl, girl.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for your boy, James Bubba Williams, better known as DJ Exclusive. Hope y'all enjoyed the show today. Shout out to all of our guests that we had on. We greatly appreciate you coming. And once again, make sure that you download and search the Voices by Action Sprout app. Once you have the app, make sure that you enter our group code 213-756. Again, 213-756. Once you are in the community, you will be able to upload any pictures, videos, or anything else that you may have, and we can potentially play it on air. And also, we can push out any updates, any questions that we have. We can push those out directly to you. So make sure that you get the Voices by Action Sprout app and you join the Like It or Not community, y'all. Hey, thank you so much, everyone, for all the love and support today. Make sure that you hit that like button, share, comment, and subscribe so you know when Like It or Not is going down. And as always, we will see you in the morning. Peace out. Like it or not. Mwah!